So what's going on guys, Kids here and welcome back to a brand new video. For today I will show you the new best shape-shifting build in Albion Online. So I will show you what new abilities and armor you want to get. Then I will explain every single skill and what is the best skill rotation that you want to use for both PvP and PvE. And then lastly I will show you the best gameplay so you would be able to get the best results and highest damage possible and much more. So no matter how much silver you have, or how high or low your weapon levels are, you can easily use this build and follow the step-by-step guide. So, if this sounds interesting to you, then let's get right into it. So then moving over to the build, and for the weapon we are going to use the Hellspawn Staff. Overall this build has very high damage, and because this is the new shape-shifting weapon, we will get 3 more additional skills and 1 extra passive. So if you want to use the best new shape-shifting build, then here you go. So then moving over to the build, and for the weapon we want to get the Hellspawn Staff. So for your Q you pick the 4th option, then for your W you pick the 1st option, and then lastly for your passive you go with the Intimidating Presence, which is the 2nd option. Then for the helmet you want to get the Call of Purity and pick the 3rd ability and 1st passive. Then for chest armor go with the Stalker's Jacket and pick the 3rd ability and 1st passive. Then for boots, go with the Guardian Boots and choose the 2nd ability and 2nd passive. Then for your cape you pick the Avalonian Cape, and then lastly for your consumables you want to go with the Poison Potions and Dead Water Eels too. But then for alternatives, specifically for 1v1 fights and fame farming, I would recommend for the Guardian Boots to go with the 3rd ability, because this will give us the Giant skill, which will double our health by 100% for 8 seconds. So if you need more defensives and you don't need the run skill, then I would recommend to pick this instead. And then lastly, if you want to try out the new Brazilian Cape, then you can switch it with the Avalonian Cape. Both capes are good, but the Avalonian is the best damage cape, and the Brazilian Cape is the best for defense. So choose whichever you prefer. I personally want the highest damage, so I went with the Avalonian, but if you can afford it, then for now you can use the normal Tetford Cape as well. Both are the same. The Avalonian will just do twice as more damage. As I've said in other videos, the best builds are versatile, so you can get 100% performance no matter in what type of event you're participating. So that's why having multiple options is the way to go. Okay, so now let's go over to the gameplay, where I will show you the best way to play this build. So for the first Q spell we have the Pulse Shock. This skill will cast the Shadow Shockwave in front of you, which will deal damage, decrease the enemy's resistance and build up your stacks. Then the 2nd W skill will place the Circle Shadow, which in 4 meter range will deal damage every 0.7 seconds, and additionally will slow the enemy for 20%. And on top of all of this, each hit that the enemy takes in the circle will apply 1 more stack to your character. And then for our E skill we have the Hellfire Imp Transformation, which is very fun and overpowered skill. So first things first, when you press the E skill, you will transform into a Hellfire Bat. This transformation will increase your damage and energy regen, but will decrease your armor. So if we open up our character info, and you can see that right now in the human form, we have 4039 health, and our physical and magic damage both are on 28%. Well, now when we transform, you can see that now our physical damage is 50%, and our health has dropped to 3333, and our armor has also dropped to 66. So basically this transformation will make us very strong, but just a little bit weaker, and as soon as we change back, we will gain back our old stats. So with that said, anytime we want to deal massive damage, we just press the E and transform into the bat, and then from here we will get 2 new skills. The Q is our main damage dealer, which will shoot a fire orb that will deal damage through all enemies that it goes through, and if you have at least 1 stack applied on you, then the orb will explode and do even more damage, plus teleport you to their location. And then second of all we have the W skill, which will channel this fire that shoots the fireballs every 0.2 seconds. The small damage and having to channel it is not great for PvP, so I would recommend to only use the skill for fame farming. And then lastly, the second part of the skill is that if we drop to 0% health while in the bat form, then instead of dying we will get immunity from stunts and damage, and depending on how many stacks we had, we will get from 5 to 30% health back. So as you can tell, this weapon is amazing for fame farming and general PvP. Basically we can build up to full stacks from 2 Qs and 1 W. and then we can keep resetting the stacks timer by just using the basic Q skill on the enemy, and then when we get to low HP, we can just transform into the bat, and then when the enemy thinks that we have just died, but instead we get revived with 30% health back, and then we can just finish off the enemy. So if you are tired of getting quickly killed when fame farming, or you just can't escape that one-shot build in PvP, then this build is your new answer, because now you can outplay the enemy and get a second life with 1/3 of your HP back. So then with that said, now let's move over to the next skill, which is the electric field. And when you activate it, we will get this big red electric field that will last for 7.5 seconds and deal massive AoE damage every 0.5 seconds. Then for the helmet we have the Avalonian beam. This skill will shoot a massive energy for 22 meters. That will do insane amount of damage and interrupt any enemy spell casting. So this skill is great for both PvP and PvE. And then finally we have the F skill, which is just a simple speed boost. That will give us 80% speed and health regen for 8 seconds. Then for our consumables we have the poison potions for extra damage and the dead water eel stew for increased damage and cooldown buffs. And then finally we have the Avalonian cape, which when we use auto attack on the enemy, it will do big damage in 6 meter range, while reducing the enemy's damage by 15%. So this is basically the same thing as the Tetford cape, just with more damage and the debuff on the enemy. So with all of this said, now let's move over to the rotation. And PvE and PvP basically work the same way. So then at the beginning of the fight we want to use our Q skill, then one W skill, and then again we use once the Q skill. And by this time you should have bunch of stacks, which you can now see on the top left corner or under your character HP bar. So then from here we want to just transform into the bat by pressing the E skill, and then from here we can just use auto attacks plus the Q skill. Then when our bat form runs out, then we can use the R and D skills. And then from here again we can just keep using the Q and W, and then transform again into the bat and keep using the new Q and auto attacks. And then lastly, if your health ever drops low, then switch back to the bat form, and when your HP drops to 0, you will get revived and get from 5 to 30% HP back. So now let's see what we did in this rotation. But first, while using the Q twice and W once, we will do a bunch of damage and get from 3 to 5 stacks, depending on how many enemies we hit. So then from here we can just transform into the bat, so we could do insane damage by using auto attacks, which will activate the cape plus do twice as more damage. And then we can use Q for even more AoE damage. Then when our bat form runs out, then now we can use the R and D for even more damage. And then we can just keep using this rotation, but then when we are about to die, then we switch back to the bat form to not die but get revived automatically. As you can see, this build is very simple, and to be honest you can use skills in whatever order you like, as long as you always have at least 1 or 2 stacks when entering the bat form, so your damage would be increased, as well as you want few stacks when you're about to die in the bat form, so you would get that 30% back instead of 5 or 10. But remember that this build has insane damage, and all skills will do DPS. Just with those few stacks, you will do even more of it. This build is very fun, and right now from all the new shapeshifting weapons, this is the best overall setup. So I recommend for you to try this one out, as it is amazing for 1v1s and fame farming. And on top of all of this, you can even change for the Stalker's Jacket to the Defense Inferno skill and get even more defensives. But especially for PvP, don't be afraid to just keep using all of your skills and try to burst the enemy down, because we have that revival with 30% HP back, and in PvE, this should be very easy and simple, and that's about it. So I really do appreciate everyone for watching guys, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any suggestions, feedback or other good Albion online builds that you would like to see in the next video, then feel free to leave your comments in the comment section down below. And while you're doing that, please click like, subscribe and enable that notification bell, so this way you could support the channel and you would not miss any more amazing content. With all this said, you have an amazing day and I will see you in my next video, so take it easy, peace.